Next up, Matt and I are delivering justice for 90s kids everywhere. The 4K Kings are going to give you what 90s kids need on 4K.
Welcome back to 4K Kings. My name is Matt.
I am Russ.
And welcome to the 90s.
Oh, do I wish, man. My life went a lot like Al Bundy's. You know, I peaked in high school.
And now, here we are.
Exactly.
Welcome to the 90s.
I think 90s kids are a demographic that has not been served well by the 4K market. And I think there are a lot of great films that are very 90s that kids identify with, would love to see restored. But most times, especially boutique labels, I feel like they focus on the 80s the most. 70s and 80s, which makes sense because that is our demographic. The title that did it to me, No Clueless on 4K.
Ugh, as if.
That's strange to me. And that's what kind of led me down this trail of thought of, wow, there are a lot of 90s films that are beloved by an entire generation that do not have the 4K treatment.
Man, I'm tired of being right.
Well, I'm glad you explained that. I brought my 8mm along. I missed the mark.
Well, admittedly, my idea was a thinker. I'm talking about movies that really, I think that generation identify with hard.
We'll go chronological, not actually put these in any sort of real top 10, but chronologically.
Yeah. That's right. We're not here to compare and contrast what is the better 90s film. It's more of a summation of, wow, why don't we have physical media access to these titles?
Correct. And the first one is 1990s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Fun fact, Matt only purchased this Blu-ray for part 3.
Tell me, you didn't pay money for this.
Ooh. That's a trash release.
It is. This is awful. The original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has never had a good, even standalone release. I think Umbrella put out, when they were first getting going, they put out like a Stinkovision one or something, and it's certainly not in 4K. All of the other remakes at this point, they're in 4K. So why hasn't this landmark piece of 90s cinema, as far as the culture is concerned, in my opinion, I waited in line to see this movie.
Dude, so did I.
I'm in love.
I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a great example of New York.
It looks awesome
as well. That movie is way grittier than it has any right being. It's a better film than it was given credit for critically. I'm not saying it's a masterpiece. I'm not saying it's the best film ever made. But dude, that is a great kids movie that, in my opinion, treated kids with respect.
It kind of felt a little adult.
It felt dangerous.
It did.
It felt real. It felt like there were stakes.
I was scared.
Well, I wasn't. I'm not a complete pussy.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, we need it in 4K.
Our next choice is the 1991 seminal sentimental classic, My Girl. Now, Matt, I don't think you and I have ever discussed this. We've been two macho broski friends for 20 years. We have never discussed our admiration for My Girl. I love the damn movie. I've always loved this film. I think it's sweet. I think it's a nice, nostalgic, sentimental, well acted, especially for a film that's centering on two children.
I agree that it belongs on this list and we should get a 4K.
Are we going to fight?
It made me feel uncomfortable.
Oh.
I think I was very maybe superficial a little bit with the whole Macaulay Culkin element. And I think not just because he was like a different character than he was in Home Alone, but then when he, spoiler alert, it just kind of made me feel like strange. Like, why did this movie have to do that? That was my kid mindset. Like, why did they have to do that? Like, I didn't like that. It made me feel weird.
It to you. He can't see without his glasses.
Put his glasses on. Put on his glasses.
Well acted, well performed.
Dude, come on, she's a little girl.
I know, dude, I'm just kidding.
I would definitely hold off on that Hollywood thing.
Going back and rethinking on like Jamie Lee Curtis, awesome performance. Dan Aykroyd, even great performance. Even the children were fine. But
their
I'm just
story's
saying,
sweet. Dan
yes.
Aykroyd and Jamie Lee Curtis.
Correct.
Of like him
Correct.
her bringing him out of his shell after losing his wife.
I would appreciate that
movie.
more now. Their story. I was more focused on the kid's story, and I didn't like it. It made me made me feel weird.
That's crazy. I think it's a classic.
I would call it a 90s classic, which is why it's on this list.
I'll just have to get a second opinion.
class act. 90s kids, I hope you're tuned into this one. I saw this in the theater. Of course, I was enamored with House Party as a child, so I had to see this. Class act basically exists where, hey, House Party was a success. Imagine if it wasn't rated R.
It involves sex, car chases, and sex, hip hop, and more sex.
It's over.
Did I tell you about sex?
It's over.
It's a silly role reversal film, you know, the dorky kid and the juvenile delinquent, their files get switched, but then they realize, hey, I'm struggling in sports for my scholarship to Harvard, and you need good grades, so we're going to ride this out, and they learn lessons.
My man Shakespeare was rapping about popping in some girl's coochie.
With a movie like this, it's not so much about the premise, because the premise has been done to death. It's going to all boil down to chemistry and entertainment, and I'm sorry, dude, Kid and Play are undeniably entertaining and charismatic. Even in a PG-13 movie that is clearly aimed more at kids than the superior House Party. But it's a fun film to this day. There's genuine laughs in it, even as an adult. It's a fun, cute movie. It's a good family film.
You don't hit on a girl. You be hitting on a bitch.
Mrs. Doubtfire, another 90s gem that I know you're not the biggest fan of.
Why do you always do that? I was going to sit here and let you ride it out, so I'm not going to get attacked in the comments.
I enjoy Mrs. Doubtfire. It is kind of head-scratching why this hasn't made it to 4K at this point either. There's so many, obviously, titles that everyone's thinking about. In terms of this category, this 90s category, where a lot of labels take notice to a lot of these 90s titles. Just some of these are just really baffling. Like, why hasn't Mrs. Doubtfire gotten there yet?
I completely agree. Even as someone who has never been a huge fan of this film, I had to double check. Like, we've got Jumanji. If you were around in the 90s, Miss Doubtfire was inescapable. Jumanji was honestly kind of second tier in the 90s.
I would agree. Mrs. Doubtfire was like a certified hit.
Top. It had to have been in the top 10 highest grossing films of that year.
Don't with me.
1993's Cool Runnings.
Cool Runnings. Okay.
Cool Runnings.
Cool Runnings.
This is the very definition of family entertainment. Great moral, funny, but kid-friendly. John Candy, he's lovable. I mean, he's lovable in everything. But I mean, even just seeing him in a family movie, it's a true story. You know, it's cast perfectly. And I don't want to see this one forgotten.
You're a couple decades late.
And the one thing that makes this movie great too is that it's a sports movie. And I know me and you, you know, we've said this 1,000 times, we're not necessarily sports fans, but when you do a sports movie right, when you can constantly build that tension, like will they or will they not win, the trials and getting to the end, like all of that is like really tense. And if it's done well with a great story and heart and you want the team to succeed, which you do, it really elevates the whole experience. And very similar to 1993's Rookie of the Year.
And I take it a step further. This is probably the one title on the list that I would remove.
Funky butt loving.
I love Rookie of the Year, and I know Sandlot is another 90s beloved like child baseball film. Then you've got Angels in the Outfield and Little Big League and all these different ones that kind of came out around the 90s. Rookie of the Year was excellent. It was another one that had a really great heart. Gary Busey in an actually decent normal role.
Well, thank you very much.
Bill Conti is on the track, and dude,
you sold me. We need to look up how many sports films Bill Conti had to do after Rocky.
Again, that Bill Conti feeling where you're like welling up with emotion a little when you hear the music and it pairs with the movie that you're watching. Surprisingly enough, Daniel Stern, he directed this movie. He starred in this movie. Yeah, dude, it's so weird to me. If you grew up in this time, you're this age, if you even remotely liked this kind of a movie at that time, this movie hits all the notes, if not all of them perfectly. Rookie of the Year deserves the love.
Yeah, kinda.
Our next one is Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. This is peak 90s to me. Ace Ventura, if you had to ask me what is like the top 5 90s entities that exist, I think Ace Ventura would probably make that list. Even for Jim Carrey, who had multiple successful films in the 90s, I feel like Ace Ventura is Full Tilt Carrey
Yeah, and you tie that in with the fact that this is his first movie on the heels of his success in Living Color, and In Living Color is also full tilt 90s. Like that's a complete 90s time capsule gem. I saw that in the theater because I loved In Living Color.
I think I saw it a couple times.
Yeah, and it gave me everything and more that I was hoping for. Like I don't even know what I was going to expect, and it just blew me away in terms of laughs. What I thought I was going to get.
Critics were not kind to this.
No, I can see why.
Well, you ever read Ebert's review? It's infamous, man. It's one of his, like, he despised Ace Ventura. Oh. It's silly and ridiculous, but it works so well because of how committed Jim Carrey is to this.
Yes.
And another reason I will always say this film works so well. In typical movies like this, everyone's kind of silly. In Ace Ventura, everyone in the movie is normal. I love that.
Yeah.
Everyone in that movie. But Jesus Christ, Jim Carrey's not. It's like in any normal situation, he'd be locked up.
Ace Ventura, come on, that's such a huge hit. Why is that not on 4K? Where is that hung up? Gotta have it. And the next one we gotta have too, 1995, Clueless.
It's a classic film, and it's flawless. I dare you to find a flaw in Clueless.
Can't do it.
I'm being honest. You can find things you don't like, but find a flaw. Like in terms of how it's presented, the filmmaking, the music, the performances, the direction, the writing, whatever. Try and find a flaw in that. And it was a genius conceit that essentially started its own genre. You take something Shakespearean, or in this case, Jane Austen, update it.
And I don't think we mentioned this too much about some of the other titles yet, but I will say, at least for this one, how it looks would be great in 4K. God,
yes. And it's a time. This is a time capsule of 90s. For a kid who was in middle school when this came out, every white girl I knew was trying to be like Cher for at least a couple months. Dude, throw a picture up of my 8th grade dinner dance. My date, she's wearing a red dress and has a boa. Yeah. What do you think she was doing that for? And she dumped me 2 days before the dance, and I still had to go with her. It was demoralizing, Matt.
You're a virgin who can't drive.
And then another one that I'm just still I can't believe has not made it yet either, as far as this decade is concerned, even just this series is concerned. Austin Powers.
I mean, they've been released to death on DVD.
Yeah, this platinum, New Line Platinum series, this green case. There was a red.
It was a snapper.
Oh, behave. Yeah.
We need at least to get this started. I don't know how we're going to do it, if it's going to be one at a time, box set, whatever you're going to say, but we need this. Why isn't it in 4K yet?
I'm with you, but in my opinion, and it still sticks, this still works for us 90s kids, I vastly prefer Spy Who Shagged Me. And it's not just because I had a crush on Heather Graham.
I agree. I think I have more fun with that one.
Yeah.
I do really like Elizabeth Hurley, and I do miss that she's not in that one as far as her character. I do like that they wisely gave Dr. Evil more screen time.
That's exactly what I was just about to say.
Wisely.
They fixed it. They watched the first movie and they were like, whoa, the villain's firing harder than Austin Powers.
There's nothing more pathetic than an aging hipster.
And even how they keep amping up like the relationship between him and Scott, with like now Mini-Me is like in the mix, but he's trying to repair the relationship. It's like that whole thing it's hilarious. Silly. And then lastly, Russ, 1999, Iron Giant. Still no 4K.
Wow.
Baffling. Animation always looks incredible.
And this movie is so beloved.
Dude, I love The Iron Giant. It plays like an adult drama, just animated. And it takes its time. It's so thoughtful. It's so smart. It's so heartfelt. It's a masterpiece, and it was so underseen when it first came out. And then over the years, it's built in stature. But 90s kids saw it right away because they were kids. They were getting taken to see the new cartoon movie. You know? Dude, this was Brad Bird's debut, man, and he went on to great success. Ratatouille, Incredibles. Look at his resume post Iron Giant, and if you haven't seen Iron Giant, you know what league you're going into. Anybody who collects physical media either loves Iron Giant or it's on their to-watch list. Vin Diesel would do a goddamn commentary, I'm sure.
Talk to me, baby.
It just feels like most of these titles must be hung up in some way, like for some reason. Like how do we not have these? But it's a great list. Did you have any runner-ups?
I don't know how much 90s kids are clamoring for this one, but I am, and that's 1990s Dick Tracy. I think that would pop in 4K, man.
I'd love to rewatch
I
that.
would love. First off, it works better as an adult. I'm lucky. I didn't see it as a kid. I saw it when I was a little older, and I was able to watch it. It's like, dude, this is kind of an awesome parody of gangster movies. Or I would have been 8 when it came
Yes.
out. I probably would not have liked it.
McDonald's told me it was a kid's movie, and they marketed things to me over about Dick Tracy.
What can you win in McDonald's Dick Tracy game?
Nothing, see? We got it all. All the cash, all the food.
Nonsense. There's still millions of food and cash prizes waiting to be won.
And it's not a kid's movie. I didn't feel like I didn't even know what the frig I was looking at. I liked Madonna, and when she showed up, I was like, oh, okay. Even Al Pacino, I had no real understanding of who he was.
Oh, dude, and he's going full Pacino.
That's what I want to see
he's
again.
Going full Pacino.
In weird makeup now.
We most definitely need Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit, starring Ms. Lauryn Hill.
All people can be so sweet.
My runner-up was Mortal Kombat.
That doesn't exist on 4K?
No.
That's another one I would just assume I missed.
Dude, all of these Mortal Kombat remakes that have come out in 4K, they've got 4K releases themselves and streaming. They're all huge hits. Why hasn't the original been plucked out of like the nether realm and brought back into existence in 4K? Like, come on, 90s kids, let's do it. Yeah. I watched that movie in the theater. I was pumped. I loved Mortal Kombat. I loved that movie, even though it's probably objectively bad, and I could probably look back on it and realize how objectively bad it is. But as a kid, dude, I was fired up on the level of maybe Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like when I went to go see it.
And you weren't the only one. That was huge. Mortal Kombat, that's 90s. Dude. That's 90s. Matter of fact, Matt, you should have put that on here instead of Rookie of the Year.